So last week, do you remember where we ended up? We ended up with the seventh trumpet. Okay? And here's what happened then. I think it's kind of interesting. The seventh angel blew his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, now I got to remind you, the seventh trumpet is after all kinds of stuff went to hell in a handbasket. All kinds of stuff is falling apart, and there were the three dreads and all these things. But listen what they sing in the midst of all that. The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Messiah, and he will reign forever and ever. You see what they say in the middle of everything going wrong? They say, essentially, look, everything's going right. How hard is it for you, in the midst of everything going wrong, to say everything's going right?
Difficult.
It's a challenge to us, isn't it? What do we do when we don't like what life has given us? I want you to name at least one thing that you don't like about life right now. Go ahead, Judy, what's your one thing?
Pain.
Pain. Yep. Peggy? Peggy, what's one thing you don't like?
I don't like wearing a mask everywhere outside the house.
Yeah, it's just not comfortable, normal, right, anything like that. Earl, how about you?
I'm getting old.
Getting old. Never simple, is it? Sandy, how about you?
Our daughter can't visit us, and I'm very sad.
It's tough, all those disconnections that we have where you just can't hop across the city, right? And see someone. Joyce looks like she stepped away. Oh, no, there she is. Joyce, tell us something that's not going right.
I'm sorry. I didn't adjust it. I came on as you had the screen on. I don't like the mask. I'm with Peggy. I just hate it.
In the midst of everything going wrong, what do we proclaim as the truth?
It's necessary to wear the mask.
No, we proclaim that everything is okay. Not that the thing that we're complaining about, not that we want to like the mask, but that in the larger picture, the kingdom of the world is transforming into the kingdom of God. That what feels true, the disease, the problems, the issues, are somehow being changed in the moment. Now, how many don't quite feel the change yet?
I don't feel the change yet.
The good news is that neither does the writer of Revelation. Because from all the sevens that we did last week, where everything was going wrong, suddenly we come to this week, and what he talks about is the dragon, the beast, the other beast, and the whore. Does that sound like everything's going right?
Well,
But he does proclaim something else. He holds up the number that we talked about last week. Time times and half a time, 3.5, which means what? That it's not 7. You're in the middle. Just wait. We're moving towards the perfection of this moment. Right? We're moving towards 7. We're not there yet. You might not have guessed that we're not there yet, but just know that it's true. Okay? And so as we go deeper into the problems, remember the truth in the midst of it. Okay? Because in the midst of this, it'll be easy to forget the truth of what he's trying to say. So here's what happens. A great portent appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pangs in the agony of giving birth. Then another portent appeared in the heaven, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. Then the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child so that he might devour her child as soon as it was born. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was snatched away and taken to God and to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, so that there she can be nourished for 1,260 days. Doesn't feel like everything's going right, does it?
No.
Here comes the dragon. Now, I hope you notice that here, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. This is not just any normal woman.
No.
This is something magnificent happening, right? Now, you should get the pretty obvious comparisons to Jesus, right? There's always that portent. What you may not know, that it has another very important reference that it's making here. This story of a baby being born and being chased by a dragon also has a parallel in Greek mythology. You might have heard it. It's the god Apollo.
Oh.
Have you heard of Apollo?
Mm-hmm.
Son of Zeus, twin brother to Artemis, the huntress. And their mother is one of Zeus's concubines, and Hera doesn't like it. And so Hera sends a dragon to beat them. But Father Zeus takes care of child. So he's drawing both from the Greek heritage in which the Jews were living at the time and the Jewish heritage of what was happening. And he's drawing together to say that even in the midst of the dragon doing whatever the dragon's doing, God saves the day. That we can trust in the midst of it all that God is working. Now, what about your life doesn't tell you that message, where it's hard for you to believe this? How is it that you're having to struggle with, is God really present in the moment? It doesn't tell you the easy answers to get out of this, but it does tell you to keep believing that there is a different answer than whatever is before you. Okay? The good news is that you're going to forget, but it's not just up to you to remember. Do you remember what I told you, what I think this whole book is? I think this whole book is the setting for worship services.
Oh, yeah.
This is how they reminded each other of the story that they believed in. This was ways to be able to, in the midst of things, proclaim a larger, better truth. Which is what we try to do when we come together as a church, is we try to tell each other that whatever it is that your life is telling you of the negative sort, there's something else that we proclaim. So what are some of those things we try to proclaim to each other? What's something that you want, for example, you want your pastor to speak to you on a regular basis? What do you want your friends to speak to you on a regular basis in church? What is it that you hope that the songs we sing speak to you?
It's all gonna be okay.
That everything will be okay. Yep. What else?
We want to be able to express and to hear love.
We do want to be able to express and hear love, which is one of the reasons why this for me is a challenging time, because in the midst of where it'd be really strengthening for me to get a hug from you.
No hugs.
It's a little harder, isn't it?
Yep, it is.
And so we have to find other ways to be able to speak that hug that we can't quite give. We have to be able to speak that love in ways. How many have a little less hope in the midst of all this? But how many have somebody who maybe is helping you to hear hope as you're going through this? That's at least part of what we're trying to say on Sunday mornings, is we're trying to speak some of that. We're trying to say there is something different than just what seems real. Hopefully it's something that you're doing as you give phone calls to some of your friends, or they call you up, or you write notes and letters, as you wave to your neighbors, right? Because maybe in the months before this, how many did a lot of kind of ignoring those neighbors? Not because you were mean, but you just took it for granted. And now in social isolation, you go, hey neighbor, kind of need you. Wave back at me so I know that I'm not alone. And we remind each other, and we tell the story that we know is true, but that doesn't in the moment feel completely like it. That's what this whole story continues to be, because we feel the dragon. The dragon's there ready to eat the baby. But what happens? The baby somehow is saved miraculously. Her child was snatched away and taken to God and to his throne. And she, to a place where she is nourished for the next three and a half times. Times and half a time. So that until the fulfillment happens in this second half of the story, she is safe. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven proclaiming, now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accusers of our comrades have been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God, but they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they did not cling to life even in the face of death. Rejoice then, you heavens, and those who dwell in them. Now, there's some troublesome things that I know that you don't like much here. How many do not like words like blood of the Lamb? How many are not enamored of that phrase? Basically what they mean anytime they say something like this is closer to what's meant down here. And this is troublesome for me. For they did not cling to life even in the face of death. How many feel like in some real ways we're in the face of death? Now you may not have a neighbor or a family member who has COVID, but all of us as a nation are sitting here under at least a minor stress space because everything is facing a death that we can't quite fix and do anything about, right? Have you felt that little stress in you? And it's not that it's high and your adrenaline's pumping, but maybe because all of our natural things can't kick in, it's even harder because we're just sitting here going, feeling unsettled, unsure. And so we have to remind each other of these truths that we hold, okay? Whether or not we understand them. And so they sing on a regular basis during this part of the celebration service. And they sing to each other and they say, see, this is why God is there. Even when it is in the midst of what we don't understand. So to go back to it, death might be there, but do not cling to the little bits of life in the face of death. Go towards whole life. Go towards what the heavens proclaim, essentially. Now, this is what happens to the dragon. The dragon was angry with the woman and went off to make war with the rest of her children, those who keep the commandments of God and hold the testimony of Jesus. So when you choose to hold on to the truth, guess what happens? The dragon turns wrath against you. Don't expect it to be simple. How many have
You know,
borne the backlash of something that you hold as true because it goes against somebody else's politics?
Yeah.
Or it goes against somebody else's way of thinking this is what should happen in the economics of our country. You don't get it simple because you're holding on to what your faith tells you to hold on to. In fact, sometimes that causes exactly the opposite of comfort. But you have to hold on anyway. So this is what happens in the next chapter. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea. And it talks about that beast and all the things that are like it. You might notice that here, the beast had a leopard, a bear, a lion. You might recognize all those animal images because we talked about them a couple weeks ago. They're the images that I showed you a picture of from a chapel at First Church Phoenix. And they're the images of the beast from Daniel. Do you remember that? I showed you 4 stained glass windows.
Yep.
And this dragon has the face of all of those beasts. And it's all of that tied into one. And then there's this. One of its heads seemed to have received a death blow, but its mortal wound had been healed. And in amazement, the whole earth followed the beast. They worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" The beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for
42 months.
which is
3.5 years.
times half a time. Right?
Mhm.
It's really easy at this point to be able to point to a certain leader and say, "There, I see the beast."
Beast.
Right? Because there's no doubt that our personification of the beast bears up many of these things easily. But my cousin Bob saw that same beast in 8 years of a different president.
Yeah.
And so it's not a singular event. And when we try to turn it into a singular event, we miss the point. It's an ongoing set of struggles of how I, as a faithful person, might be stymied by somebody who has other ideas, other conceptions, other ways of announcing truth to be there. Now, I think my cousin Bob was wrong in seeing the beast where he saw the beast. But I'm pretty sure he thinks I'm wrong as well. So what I have to recognize is, where is it, how is it that I'm trying to be with that person who definitely sees this moment very differently? How is it that I act in the faithful way that I'm supposed to act? How do I proclaim this type of message? Now comes the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God. When you see the beast gaining power, how do you help people find a way beyond the power of the beast? How do you proclaim something different? Because, as this said, in amazement, the whole earth followed the beast.
Mhm.
It may not be where you're at in faithfulness. It may not be where most people go to. Maybe even a lot of people that you care about. That beast will have power, but it's only for 42 months, not for the whole of times. Listen what it tells you in its next little liturgical piece. Let anyone who has an ear listen. If you are to be taken captive, into captivity you go. If you kill with the sword you must be killed. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. What do you think that's calling us to? What's it saying is our faithfulness in this moment? Take just the first sentence of the liturgy itself, this one right here.
Mhm.
What do you think that means? What is John trying to tell the people around him?
Just let go.
Say that again, Sandy.
Just let go.
To let go. That you don't have to solve all the issues. Because sometimes the way we solve issues is this way. If you kill with the sword you must be killed. There are right and there are wrong ways for us to respond to this. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be active. We shouldn't do things. We shouldn't work towards the best possible answer. But the captivity that we want to fight against might just be the way that God uses this as a redemptive moment. The captivity into which Israel was carried wasn't the end of that nation, or at least wasn't the end of the people who were part of that nation, no matter how much it felt like it in the moment. But if you kill with the sword, if you lose yourself and who you are as a person of belief, then truthfully, you have lost everything. And with the same sword that you kill, you must be killed. You understand that?
Mhm.
That if we lose the core of who we are, if we, as people of love, fail to respond in love, have we gained anything? If we as people of hope lose hope and don't share hope with others, we've lost our very selves. But a moment like this always challenges us. How many have been in a conversation sometime in the last couple of years that you wanted to reach out and smack the person across from you? Because of whatever they said, however they said it, whatever stupidity from your point of view seemed to be coming out of their mouth. But then you have to remember things like turn the other cheek. Love your enemy. You have to remember some of those things that are most core to who we are as people of belief. That doesn't mean, hear me carefully like this. It doesn't mean that we become milquetoasty and we don't do anything. We might need to be bold in proclaiming something larger than whatever this picture is. We might need to speak against the beast. But we have to do it in a way that keeps holding on to what is our core self. Not all the things that beast might call out of us. Because if we respond in kind to the beast, we're essentially becoming the beast.
Yeah.
And we become part of the people who give devotion to.
Which isn't to say you never should fight.
It doesn't mean that you don't fight, but you have to do it. You have to
Choose your
fight like a Christian.
Choose your battles.
Yep. And you're going to see later on that it's very clear some of how God says that we're supposed to fight. And things like, let's pick up the sword and cut off somebody else's head is not is not a response that our religion calls out of us. No matter how much we've put that into songs like Onward Christian Soldiers,
Yeah.
which for me, to be frank, is a heretical song because it's not proclaiming the Christian message. Christian message is not militaristic, and yet we often turn it into that. And we have centuries of reinforcing that. So we come by it honestly, but it's still not helpful in doing what we want what we want to have done. All right, does that make sense so far? So on we go in this story, deeper into what's going on. Then I saw another beast that rose out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon. And here's the thing about this beast. It does marvelous and amazing things, and it is the propaganda beast. Okay? So one of the places where it's very easy to see that the beast existed was in Hitler, Germany.
Yeah.
Right? And Hitler plays out the role of the beast very easily. So who was the second beast? Who was the one who spun the tale that captivated that nation so they believed all kinds, and this because that was a Christian nation, right? Strong Catholic presence, strong Lutheran presence, and yet they took up swords for a very obvious beast. Who was the propaganda machine?
Goebbels?
That's exactly right. That's the second beast. So in our present moment, who is the propaganda beast?
Can we mention Fox
Yes, you can.
and Limbaugh and Alex Jones?
Those kinds of things are spreading the types of stories that are perpetuating a beast story rather than a real story. Rather than the story of belief and faith. They're pushing a political or economic or some other thing. It's not even necessarily that it doesn't have reason and purpose in some way or another, but it is not a story of the belief that Revelation is proclaiming. And you know what gets really tough about it? This morning, Joni happened to be watching some sitcom on a channel, and Franklin Graham came on and essentially did a call to salvation to people. And it's kind of upsetting to me because it's like, okay, so you're taking this moment to be able to try to turn it towards your view of how to move forward. That's important about this last little bit. Do you see this thing on the bottom that I highlighted? You've often heard about this. It says this about the beast who deceives the inhabitants of the earth. Not just the first beast, but the second beast as well. Let anyone with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a person. Its number is 666. How many have heard that?
Yeah, I've heard that.
666 in New Mexico, and also in
Yeah.
Arizona. There is a highway that runs along. It runs right through the hometown of my ancestry. Highway 666 runs right through Round Valley. And in New Mexico, about 20 years ago, they changed the number on it because they couldn't drive on the highway of the beast.
Wow.
So we get things in our head about what the beast is. In fact, in Hitler, Germany, if you take A equals 100, B equals 101, C equals 102, then H equals 107, and I 108, and T 119. And if you go through the rest of his name, those numbers add up to 666.
Wow.
And so people say, see, proof positive that he's the beast. 666. But what is this really saying? What does 666 mean? You already kind of know, but you might have forgotten because it's used in a different context. The key number throughout all of this book is the number
7.
7 is exactly right, because it is the number of God. And 6, no matter how close it is to 7, is not 7. So 3 times the writer iterates, it may look like a 7, but it's a 6. It may look like and have the power of, it may sound like a 7, but it is not quite God, not quite God, not quite God. It's very clearly saying this beast has a lot of reasons why you will want to say yes to it, but don't. No matter how much you are tempted to do that. And so, oops. And so this is how the writer responds to that beast. That's 666. The 144,000, you remember them? 12 from every tribe.
Yep.
Huge numbers of people sing a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and before the elders. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. Anybody know what the new song is?
No.
It's a song that proclaims something very different than what the world around us proclaims. It's
What?
probably referring back to Psalms, particularly Psalm number 98. And Psalm 98 sings this type of song. A number of years ago, 20 years ago now, my organist at the time, I put together this song, and it says, "Shout for joy, all the ends of the earth. Let your praises be heard. Music ringing in glorious sound, horn and trumpet and word. A new song is sung, a new life begun. Rejoice and be glad in the Lord. The promise has come, the victory won. Rejoice and be glad in the Lord." Psalm 98 was written at a time when they were facing not quite good times, but the new king was coming. And this was a song to proclaim that in that new king, something would change. And God would once again come in to change the world, to be something different. That's what this is trying to proclaim. No matter what else is going on, you have to know that that in God's world, it's not the final word yet. Remember, we're only in that 142, right? That 1,460 days, sorry. That three and a half months, that time times and time and a half, half a time. So it goes on to proclaim this. 3 angels come, and they say this. The first angel says, "Fear God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water." Let me spell it right. The second angel comes and says, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication." And the third one says, "Those who worship the beast and its image and receive a mark on their forehead or on their hands, they will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured unmixed into the cup of his anger. And they will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb." We'll get back to the fire and brimstone in just a second. But let's do the first two angels first. The very first thing that is proclaimed is what? In that moment, God is wonderful, brings springs of water, creates heaven and earth. Right? In the midst of things, we have to remember what's most important. Because what seems most important is let's do something about the beast. Right? But look what's already happened. Do you see the second angel? Do you see that it's not written in the future tense? It's not saying Babylon will fall. It's saying it's already happened. The dragon is already defeated. The beast has already lost. Why can we proclaim all this about God? Because all this is already done. Now, how many don't quite believe that in the current moment? That it still feels like the beast is pretty powerful? That the dragon is still influencing the world? What we proclaim, though, in a very real way, is that the divine force lives outside of time and space and isn't in this moment alone, but is in the greater moment that says that this moment doesn't speak the end, that there is something else that has already happened. And we who are bound by time, we who are bound by the space in which we live, can't help but see how it's not fixed yet, that it's not done, it's not solved. But in that more ethereal world, can we believe that? Can we have the hope that everything ties together towards the perfection that we hope for, that we dream of, that we work towards?
Jim,
Yes.
can I ask you a question that has always bothered me about Revelation?
Yes.
To me, it's the worst written book of the Bible.
Because?
It's the least understood. Why is it? Whoever wrote this, and why was this book included in the Bible in the first place? But it's written so it's almost unintelligible to your average person. I mean, if I try and read this, I don't make it past anything. I don't care about the dragons and all this bull crap that's being put out there. It's not even good mythology. It's to me, it's horrible. I don't like this whole book, and I don't understand it. And
But
I
I
don't
would-
understand why it was written this way.
What I would venture to say, Judy, is that what you don't like is interpretations of this book when it comes right down to it.
Because it's so badly written. There's so many. I mean, everybody has their idea of beasts and dragons and all this, but it's like the rest of the Bible is all pretty understandable.
Yes.
This is written in a way that it's like it's not even good written myth. It's just so that it's. I'm sorry. It's just my little problem with this whole book.
No, I get what you're trying to say. But the hard part is that poetry, especially mythic poetry, often gets challenging.
I read mythic poetry all the time. I have no problem with it. This, I have problems with.
Okay.
This.
Bear with me.
Okay.
And try to not let the challenge of these of the images and the whatever's been laden on them get in your way. Know that something else is very clearly being proclaimed here than all the stuff we've told about it. Okay? So for example, the 666, we've tried to make that into a literal something, and all that literalness that we've tried to place on it is getting in the way of the I think marvelous imagery of what it's trying to do. It is trying to say that these people are over here worshiping this thing that looks like God, but he's trying to say it's not. It's a beast. Don't let the imagery that seems to be there get in the way of what's really there. And we have lots of that happening right now. And we have continually, through the ages, allowed that to happen, where we've been led away by something that was easier, something that was simpler. I believe that we sold our soul, for example, when we became part of the Holy Roman Empire, and we allowed Constantine to give us legitimacy, but we sold our soul to a beast at that time, and we still have not recovered from it. When we do things like the splitting of the church that happened at the turn of the last millennium, and we became the Eastern Roman Church and the Western Orthodox Church. Excuse me, I said those backwards. Eastern Orthodox and Western Catholic Church. We sold our soul because we said only one of us can be right. Do you know what we split over in that split, 1000 AD? 2 words: et filio. And we allow those 2 words to say they're not right, and we are.
What were those 2 words again?
Et filio. It's Latin for and the Son. And one side wanted to give more power to the Son, the other didn't want to. So all of this is meant. I get that I get the struggle you have, but I would venture to say, Judy, that it's not struggle with the intent of the author. It's a struggle with the interpretations that have been placed on it, and the horrible ways that we've used it against each other, where it's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be this thing of worship where we struggle through the difficulties of how this doesn't fit into our souls, but we continually proclaim something better than just this, something stronger than just this moment. And when we turn it into a devil versus God thing, then we're giving too much power to the devil. The demon, the dragon in here, which is the closest approximation to the devil in this story, has absolutely no power. He's sitting there with his mouth open, waiting for the woman to give birth, and yet he can't even grasp the baby. The power sweeps the baby away, the woman is carried away, and the dragon's there going, wait a second, I thought I was strong. All of these images are trying to tell a different story than what we allow ourselves to tell. It's not a story of 2 sides, a good side and an evil side. It's a story about how good always wins, and the other side has no power at all.
But is that true?
I think it is true in the largest picture, not in the momentary picture. Okay, our beast today has a lot of power, a lot of influence, a lot of things that are changing the world, in my mind, in a negative way. In the largest picture, we have to keep retelling ourselves that it's not true. We should never say God will win. We should always say something like the victory is already done. Does that make sense? That's what this story is about. It's a thing that proclaims what is and is not yet. Even though we don't see it happening right now, it already is true. And we have to keep proclaiming that, especially in the midst of where we have to fight against something that's going wrong. Okay? That makes sense? Let me introduce you to one more person before we go, and that is the whore. Because I told you that there was a dragon, 2 beasts, and a whore, and so you might as well get her as well, and see the last bit of this story. Now, we won't solve everything yet because there's still things to be done, but I wanted to get all the negative characters out. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore who is seated on many waters, on whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and with the wine of whose fornication the inhabitants of the earth have become drunk." So he carries me away into the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her fornication. On her forehead was written a name, a mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of whores and of earth's abominations. And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the witnesses to Jesus. If you're not sure yet who this is, listen to this. This calls for a mind that has wisdom. The heavens' heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Also, there are 7 kings, of whom 5 have fallen, 1 is living, and the other has not yet come. People think, I'm going to go back to what I told you the very first week. People think that this is a story written in puzzling uncertainty, meant to be hidden. They think that Apocalypse means a hidden book. And this passage for me proves exactly the opposite. Okay? Because in this passage, John is very clearly saying who is part of the enemy that is there. He is talking about who he sees as his beast in the moment. Do you understand what it is? This right here, 7 mountains, should tell you. If you're not certain before then, this is Rome. Because Rome sits on the 7 hills, right? And it's one of the very definitions of that city, that empire, that part of our world. And so John is not being unclear about this. He is very clearly saying that empire which came in and destroyed the temple. That empire which came in and made it so that, once again, we have no Jewish nation, no homeland. That empire which came in and started the 2nd captivity, that is the whore. That is the beast. We are dealing with a very real, and all of these things that they're saying, 7 heads, 10 horns, jewels and pearls, all of those are images that not one person in the Roman Empire would have missed. So he's saying very clearly, we are dealing with our particular manifestation of the beast that is going to come in and is going to say, can we be faithful? Can we do something in this moment? And he's essentially giving us permission to call our beast a beast. But not in a way necessarily, and we'll talk about this more next week, in a way that makes it so that I get to look down on my cousin Bob and say, you are going to hell in a handbasket. So Bob's wife, Kim, wrote today and said, Bob is having surgery for cancer in his brain this week. Do I say good because suddenly this enemy of mine is taken? Or do I step into the space of faithfulness and say, how do I love in this moment? In every moment, we have the choice of what do we listen to. The child, newly born child, is taken away to safety. And all of us are in a space of safety if we remember the truth that is larger than the moment. And if we hold to that, how am I going to respond to my moment of meeting the whore, the beast, the dragon, and my cousin Bob, who has cancer and has surgery this week? How will I be faithful? How about you? What is it that challenges your faithfulness? Your following your beliefs, your being the people that you say you are. All those things you mentioned at the beginning might be part of it. Judy, your health challenges you that way and is in a very real way part of your beast that you have to choose how to react to. Those masks that we put on that seem to gag us and definitely cause problems, do we see them only for that, or also for the graceful action it gives to the people around us that say, I choose to protect you as well as me? In every moment, how do we become the people that our faith proclaims us to be instead of whatever the fear of the moment is? Because how we react shows how much we truly believe in what the real truth is. So have we solved everything yet? But it's coming. It's coming. We got 2 more classes. Next week will lead us through a few more challenges and difficulties, but we'll also begin to say truths about our actions in this moment. What is it that we need to do and be? And then at the end, we will come to this magnificent dream of what is the truth, okay? That we have to continue to hold up for ourselves, all right?
Mhm.
Thank you very much. I will send you this set of things that I'm working off of so that you can have them, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. I can't get out of here.